Hey y'all, happy Tuesday. I'm so excited because we're officially in our Dragged and Divine series, which is a series for Black women who are learning to lay down what we never meant to carry, what we were never meant to carry. It's where we tell the truth about what we've inherited, what we've performed, and what we're finally ready to release. Here, even the hard moments, the messy, the misunderstood, the painful are sacred because sometimes the divine doesn't come after the drag. Sometimes it shows up right in the middle of it. That's the drag, honey, the divine and the drag. Each episode starts with a raw moment, a passing thought, a lyric that maybe hits different, right? A scene from a show, a message from spirit, a conversation I can't stop replaying. Like those quiet moments when you're just kind of by yourself and just things are flowing into and through your head, you know? So let's pivot. Today's episode is about care. The kind that looks like love, but feels a little bit like pressure, right? We're talking about what happens when support crosses the line into control, when advice isn't asked for, when fear speaks louder than trust, and how we can begin to love each other and ourselves without overstepping. We're going to talk about boundaries, release. So let's get into it. Like I said, each post or episode or note in this series always begins with the raw thought I had. So the raw thought was that being a sister, a friend, and showing genuine care does not mean encroaching on each other's boundaries. So, real moment here. I had a best friend. May she rest in peace. R.I.P. girl. She loved me super deeply, but often that love showed up as control. She'd give advice I didn't ask for and tried to guide my every move and call it care. I know it came from a really good place, but it didn't always feel good. Take a moment, because I feel like we've all been there, and take a moment to check in with your body. How does it feel when care is offered with invitation on your terms? And how does it feel when it's unsolicited, overwhelming, or rooted in someone else's fear? So let's talk about the difference. The difference between care and control. Care asks, what do you need? It creates space. It waits for invitation. It trusts that the other person has a voice and a vision for their own life. Control assumes, I know what's best for you, and it moves fast, often without being asked, and it comes dressed as advice, concern, or protection, but it can feel more like management than support. Sometimes what we call just looking out is really about needing to feel in control of someone else's path. And this is why we're having this conversation today, where I said where I said, and it moves fast and often without being asked. A lot of times these situations can happen really quickly and you don't have necessarily the coping tools to actually address them in the moment. So that's what this is today. It's for those of us who are doing the projecting, and it's for those of us who are being projected on. We're going to talk about it from both angles today. Okay, so where does this come from, this projection? A lot of times it actually comes from fear. Fear leads the conversation. There's this thin line between projection and protection. Let me say that again because it might have blurred all together. There's a thin line between projection and protection, and they look almost identical on the outside. That's why it's confusing, because it feels like care, like you know the person loves you, but also they're overstepping your autonomy as a person. So you might say something out of love, but if it's rooted in your own fear, it's not about them. It's about you. So ask yourself, am I offering this because they asked me, or because I'm scared of what might happen if I don't say something? One honors their journey, the other hijacks it, right? Now, for my friends who are projected on, boundaries don't break in friendships. Well, let me true friendships shouldn't be broken by boundaries. Now, this is like a little squirrel moment. I'm not going to do it today, but I'll maybe make a full post or series about it another time. But there is a difference between true boundaries and reactionary boundaries. So I'm not talking about reactionary boundaries, but I'm talking about true boundaries. Reactionary boundaries can look like you set a true boundary for yourself, and I didn't like the boundary that you set, so I'm going to set this one back because I want to, combat your boundaries, or I don't like your boundaries. And it creates this weird energy or this like area of confusion versus true sovereignty in your relationships and with yourself, right? So let's be honest. Sometimes Black women were often taught that closeness means no boundaries. Not that that's something that's outwardly said, but that's something that can be outwardly displayed, right? That being a good friend means full access, full transparency, full sacrifice. But that's not love. That's burnout. That is a burnout bond. Just because we're close doesn't mean we owe each other every part of ourselves. Support doesn't require surveillance, okay? A healthy friendship can hold boundaries and it can hold breathing room. And it should, right? And I know a lot of us are still breaking some of these things. Like, not everything is for everybody. And that's something that I've actually had to really learn the hard way of like, okay, yes, these are my really close friends, but not every single piece or tidbit actually needs to be shared with everyone, right? So healthy friendships should also consist of healthy boundaries. Should consist of breathing room. You should feel like you're able to breathe. I remember another friendship of mine in the past where every time I talked to this person, it felt like the air was sucked out of the room because of how much projection there was and how many lack of actual legitimate healthy boundaries there were, right? So yeah, anyway, a healthy friendship should feel like breathing room, right? So, okay, let's talk about invitation before instruction. So, you don't actually have to guess how to show up. Being the person that always anticipates other people's needs is not a flex, right? I had a boss way back in the day one time tell me that like one of the skills that they really appreciated me for was my anticipatory skills. And I was like, damn, that sounds stressful, of always being able to foresee things that may come up or things that may be needed before they're needed, which is not a bad thing, but it is a bad thing when it's to your detriment or when it's over the top, especially in a relational context, You don't have to guess how to show up. Some of the best people just ask. They ask how to show up. So you don't have to guess. You can ask. Do you want thoughts, or are you just wanting a space to talk this out? Would it help if I offered what I see? Or do you want me to just be here with you? Are you looking for support or just a witness, right? These small shifts invite intimacy without taking control, right? And when you're on the receiving end of this, when someone projects onto you, even out of love, it can feel heavy and fast. And sometimes, the response is no response in the moment. My grandma always jokes. She doesn't like it, but she respects it. She actually told me this before. But she was like, Thea, she's like, when you're done talking to me, or you've heard me out, but you're going to do what you want to do anyway, you just say, okay. And she's like, that's how I know, you heard me, but you going to do what you want to do anyway. And I'm like, yeah, because you already have your mind made up. I already have my mind made up, especially when somebody's coming in telling you versus asking that consent, right? You already have your mind made up because we check out when we feel like we're not being listened to anyway, right? So that's always been my strategy. So sometimes if you can't ground in that moment or you don't have the right responses for it, okay is a response. And in solid, healthy relationships, you should be able to come back to a topic later on. Sometimes I've had to go back to people and be like, hey, I didn't have the capacity at the time that this conversation happened to structure a thought, which is very often infrequent for me because the way I process things sometimes is really slow, where I'm like, is this really happening? Is this person really saying this right now? Okay, this is fascinating, And it takes a minute to recalibrate. But I've said, I didn't have the capacity to structure or to like respond, but now I do. So I would like to talk about this now. And your people should be able to hold that to some degree, So here are a few grounding responses that you could have in your toolkit to kind of let you stay in your power, right? So one is, thanks for caring. I've got this right now. Like, I know this might come from love, but it's feeling heavy. Can we pause? I appreciate you wanting to support me. Can I come to you when I'm ready? Or if I'm ready? Or I don't need this solved. I just want to be heard right now. Do you have the capacity to even hear me right now? Because sometimes people don't have the capacity to just sit in response or sit in listening and taking things in, right? So it's definitely a two-way mutual street on how we give and how we receive in these scenarios. So you don't owe an emotional performance to someone to make someone feel useful. Your piece is valid, even if it makes someone else uncomfortable. And if it starts to press on your nervous system, you're allowed to exit instead of explaining. Sometimes that's necessary, right? So let's talk about a little something deeper real quick. Why does and how does consent free Black women? This is the part that we don't talk about enough. When you ask before offering care, you're not just protecting the other person, you're liberating yourself. You are not responsible for everyone's healing. You can still be loving without being a lifeline. Step back, let people come forward. Free yourself of these roles that no one ever asked you to play. Consent is a gift to you too. You don't have to stay 5 steps ahead of everyone else's life. You don't have to be anticipatory all the time. That's not love, that's anxiety, right? Releasing the savior complex doesn't make you selfish, it makes you honest. It gives the other person room to rise. When you ask first, you model truth speaking. You're showing people it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to say I'm not ready. It's okay to take your time. And truth be told, we're humans. There is no possible way that we can anticipate every single thing before it happens. So we have to allow people the autonomy and the trust that they know themselves and they know what they need. And they know when they don't know what they need and they know who to ask, right? We have to trust people enough in that and free ourselves from that. That's not weakness. That's real intimacy, Every time I've sought consent or someone sought consent from me, it feels like the most loving, most respectful relationship ever. And sometimes when there's been correction and I've had to be like, you know what? No, that's not what I meant. This is what I meant. And the way the person receives it has been just such a trust building exercise. Like it deepens the relationships, right? So I'm saying all of this to say again and to reiterate that we need to release the roles that nobody has asked us to fill. And I'm saying this as well because sometimes we start off in relationship giving so much, anticipating so much. And then there comes a point in time where a lot of us have been before of like complete burnout. And we're no longer able to keep up with what we've been keeping up with. And then we drop all these plates all of a sudden because we just can't handle it because we're in burnout mode. And now our relationship dynamics are shifting because it's like, you used to do this, but you don't do this anymore. Do you not care about me anymore? Because we've built these relationships based on doing, right? And not just being present, being a witness, being in care of self and others, right? So that's the real tea, okay? That's not weakness. Again, that's real intimacy. So you don't have to rescue to love, and you don't have to overextend to prove you care. We can meet each other honestly right here in the middle. So that is today's tea on the mediocre Black woman, honey. And I want us to really sit with and think about how we can free ourselves and free up our energy, free up our peace when we don't have to be worried about everyone else's well-being all the time to our detriment, right? We can pour some of that back into ourselves and then show up more presently, more authentically, more openly for others. Okay. That's it. That's all. I'll see y'all on the other side. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share this episode with somebody that needs to hear this. Okay. That's Captain Save a Ho. Share that with them. You know who that is in your tribe. We all have a few. Some of us are still the Captain Save a Ho's, so make sure you bookmark this if that's you. But anyway, share it with your bestie. Make sure to share it with their bestie too. I want to hear about your experiences with this. I want to hear from you in the comments on how you plan to start asking for consent more. Start shifting the conversation when you feel that you're being projected on versus inviting someone in yourself. I want to hear it all. Okay, I'll see you on the other side. Bye.